Hey everybody. So when we left off yesterday, basically, I wanted to update this. We're back into validation again. I thought I was done with it, but we're back in. And basically, for these two valid situations, there is a situation where you could be trying to get to a valid state, but you have to go through an invalid state first. And the valid state that I'm thinking of is point one. And as you notice when I typed in point in there, basically it the code basically if it sees that you went from a valid state to an invalid state, it'll just go back to the valid state. But I do want point to be an exception. So uh, I think the so I guess we need to get it working, and then I think it's probably smart to create an exceptions list or something so that everywhere that we use these floating point numbers, which I think is going to be the biggest use, um, uses the same exception list, which, we could do that by setting up a token or by setting up an exceptions by token, because we do know in every case we do know what the uh, validation token is. So we could set up a little list of exceptions for a given validation token. But first thing we have to do is say if legal or invalid invalid exception. And we're just going to say dot do nothing. So basically, we're going to get something other than none if there was an exception. Um, so if there's anything other than none, or right, is it or if it's equal, to, if it and if it's not equal to dot, right? So and current value. So I'm just saying, hey, like if it's equal to just a plain dot, then don't do anything. Just leave it as is. Um, so let's see if that works. Working, and then let's see. So this is for validate near. We need to do the same thing. We're going to need to do the same thing for um, density as well. Yeah. So I think that's cool. It just basically leaves that up. Now, I don't know if that breaks anything, and I guess it would be good to know just for our own knowledge. See if we take our fog and we make it linear. See, we just saw something happen, and we say, "Hey, make the fog near point." Yeah, something happened. It did something to it. I don't know if it defaulted. I don't know. There's no telling what it did, but whatever it was, we probably want to make sure that we don't that we kind of get control of that. And I think the best way to do that would be to say to add the additional in this handler. Um, let's see. Yeah, update scene, green color change, red color change. Okay, setting up the form fields. Usually it's like when I set up the form fields, I'll do some sort of handler. Let's just control F update scene. Okay, so here is where we update the scene if it's animated. So this is where we set up our subscriptions. So, and we're going to have to do this for fog density, but near. Okay. So we're saying if the value exists and uh, this is kind of a bummer. So I don't know if at this point, if we know what the validation token for this thing is. So I was kind of hoping to be able to say, yeah, so basically at this point, I'm going to, when we do the update, I'm going to have to say for this path, what is the validation token? Because I don't know what it is. And with that, I want to use the validation token um, in order to determine if it's an exception. But for now, we're just going to check that it's not a decimal point. So should just leave it alone, right? Just leave it alone. Just leave Brittany alone. Um, let's see. Dot. Oh, we aren't even checking anything. Let's go back to 1. So that all seems to work. Let's go ahead and add a mesh. Turn on some fog. So it is a little gray. I don't know if you noticed that. Make it a little pink. Put a dot in there. Yeah, and it stays as was. Let's double it. It's a little less pink because near is a little farther away. I believe right now the camera is at 5 and this is sitting at 0, so it's 5 away. So fog starts at 2. So if we made it to 6, say then, if we made it to 1, then we get a little bit. So that is now working. That validation, it didn't seem like that was that long. We could probably do the other one too. And I don't know if it's just, I don't know if it probably makes sense to go through the whole process of updating getting the tokens and figuring out what we need to do to be able to get that token, since that is, I think, kind of going to be a huge part of the next iteration. So the more experience we can get with that, the better. Let's see, and current value. So we did basically, we're doing like a copy paste, which, obviously is sort of an indicator that you are on a bad path. But for now, maybe tomorrow we can start working on the validation token. So basically I added that there. And actually it'll be very interesting to see if something breaks with the exponential fog. If we make it a little pink and make the fog density dot. Yeah, see it. Oh wait. Dot. Yeah, so, and actually, so let's change this to 3. Now let's change it to dot. Yeah, see, it actually broke things. It really actually did something weird because it actually set it to 0. Oh, and that's because, on the key up, I am not fixing it. So let's see. I think it was right here. Something along this line, and fog density. So we're saying if let's see this guy. So we're gonna say don't update this scene. So yeah, that last test didn't really test anything. Science. I was using the scientific method, and I had an idea, and I was completely wrong. Let's see. Exponential. Oh, let's go ahead and add a mesh. Exponential. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit of pink so it's a little easier to see. And make this a point. I don't know what happened there. Point. Okay, so it didn't seem to care, but actually something seems wrong up here. Oh, I added a point in there. I was wondering why I didn't update there. So anyways, so we have that. Um, tomorrow we'll go ahead. Yeah, we're at 10:24. Tomorrow we'll go ahead and go to the service, that validation service, and we'll add a new. I'll just show you real quick. Validation service. Is that under utils? Yep. Util is probably not the right place for it. So right now we have like these sort of lists of these dictionary lists. So I'm going to just say for invalid positive float, um, that you can have a exception to the validation. Is the invalid exception will be a decimal point. Um, and then um, and then what'll happen is then we'll go ahead and retrieve. We'll use our token we'll create a function that's kind of like this. Get validation text for token, get validation. It'll be like exceptions for token, and then that will return um, uh, a token. I mean, that will return an array of exceptions. And the only tricky part is going to be that in our scene manager, where we make these changes based on the value changes, we actually don't know what the token is. So we're going to have to go ahead and get the list of tokens from this, and then check to see if it's a valid token. And then that way, the advantage of that is going to be that if we needed to add a second validation, another exception, we don't have to go into multiple places. Everybody's using the same one. So or the same list. So, it won't. I'm assuming that the exceptions will always be the same for anything that happens to be a numeric float. Like all of them will have the exception of putting a decimal point in, because that's how you go from that. Because sometimes you have to go from you have to go to an invalid place before you can get to the valid place. So like, yeah, if I go to A, I'm curious. Then I don't know what happened there. That's actually pretty interesting. It reset it to 0, which I think is pretty reasonable, but I don't know if that was like why that happened. But point, then A. Yeah, so it's makes sense that it should say it. It's actually weird. I guess because it was not the exception, it actually sent the A through to the scene manager, and I guess I have a bit of an inconsistency in the way that gets handled at the scene manager between, or it could be that ThreeJS is doing something a little different. But anyways, that is that. I guess we'll be doing a little bit more validation tomorrow, and hopefully we can take care of that tomorrow, so then we can get started to FAR, and FAR will have the exact same validation types, so that should be super quick to get done. And then I wanted to add another kind of validation where I say, hey, near has to be less than FAR, less than or equal to FAR, FAR has to be less than or equal to, greater than or equal to near. And that is a bit of a redo. We are at November 25th. So, I feel like we can get that done. And then I guess it's going to be time to go back for another round of animation, which I want to kind of, right now we have a certain kind of animation that is a complete just goat rope. I mean, it's just a big mess in there. basically, I started with this fundamental concept, and the fundamental concept was that the object, the 3JS object itself, would always be the source of the truth, and that's not true. Unfortunately, there are some properties that 3JS doesn't save. So then that caused me to have to do a refactor, and it was like a half baked refactor. Um, for some things, I believe it was camera look at. Um, the 3GS doesn't keep track of what the current camera look at is, so so I have to keep track of that on my side by resetting it all the time. So if I'd have known that from the beginning, then it would have been a good idea um, to all have them all do that, where I just calculate what the next whatever it's supposed to be based on the type of animation, and then I just populate that value instead of going to 3JS and asking that value. It's more like I populate what it should be, and I tell 3JS what to make it. Um, so um, so now I'm going to try to set up something kind of similar to what I did for validation, but for animation. So that means I'll have like two kinds of of two sort of kinds of animation, which isn't a good idea. But I think that will take me out to the end of the year, and then I will sort of retire this version of Showtime, and I'll start a new one with just that basic core. The two main things. So basically, this was a POC that I guess I worked on for most of 2024. Then I'll start a POC in 2025. I was hoping to go from a POC to an MVP, but there are some fundamental things that I wanted in this POC to prove before I would start a MVP. And one was be able to import and export the images. Two was going to be to have music that or sound, I guess is a better way of putting it, in here. And three was a physics engine that I wanted to be able to put in there. And I think because I think it makes sense for me to, I think that, like, I knew when I set up validation, I remember saying it at the time, I set up validation, there's going to be a problem with this because I don't have the vaguest idea how to do this right, but I really want to have validations because I think they're really cool. Um, Now I feel like this tokenizing the path and then storing information based on the path um, solves that problem. And and now I know exactly how I want to do it, and retrofitting this existing application to that is not going to be tenable. It's going to be a big mess. So anyways, happy coding, everybody. Bye.